Good day time, my fuzzies, and welcome to a quick review of a game, movie, or TV show I just finished. All thoughts and feelings are my own and are just for fun, quick way to get out my feelings on what I just played or watched. So enjoy and don't take anything too seriously. Good day time, my fuzzyites, and welcome to a quick review of Sonic the Hedgehog Game Gear version. Sonic the Hedgehog Game Gear version was released for, surprise surprise, the Game Gear, sometime in December 1991 in North America. I looked for a concrete date, but I kept getting multiple different ones, but a lot of them usually said in December, so December unfortunately is the closest I could get. Though I didn't play the Game Gear version specifically, I played the port of it on the Sonic Mega Collection Plus for PS2. The game is the second Sonic game made following Sonic the Hedgehog for Genesis, and the third game to feature Sonic if you include his cameo appearance in Rad Mobile as a rearview mirror decoration. Technically, Sonic the Hedgehog Game Gear is just Sonic the Hedgehog made with the Game Gear's limitation, which allows the game to follow a lot of what the Genesis version does, although having some different features, enemies, themings, and a lot of stuff being different, which altogether kinda makes it a different experience and a different game in general, but whether you include it as just Sonic the Hedgehog, just like the Genesis version, or its own different natural thing, is up to you. I personally consider it to be a different game under the same name, as it is wildly different. Well, not wildly, but it is pretty different than the Genesis version, though very fun in its own way. The story is exactly the same, or pretty well close to the same, as in the Genesis version, with Dr. Ivo Robotnik invading South Island and building his fortress that starts polluting the land. He then sends his badniks across the land to capture all the wild animals while searching for the Chaos Emeralds to aid him in his sinister ambitions. Now, Sonic must rush across the island through levels, gathering all 6 Chaos Emeralds and beating Robotnik before it's too late. The characters here continue to have a lot of what they had in the Genesis version, maybe a few minus alterations here and there and some enemies missing. But you still got Sonic being impatient if you stop for even a few seconds, and happy when he triumphs/wins the day and whatnot, giving some basic yet very effective moods, which he carries on past this, and is still the Hedgehog we know and love. As Robotnik, he has his very basic interactions of hating to lose, scared being chased, as well as some other, minor ones that kind of show he doesn't like what goes on. Seeing as it's an old Game Gear game, there was not a lot of dialogue, well, no dialogue, very few cutscenes, but what cutscenes that are there do give the emotion and the story across of what happens for Sonic and what he does to win the day. There are 6 zones in the game, with 3 acts in each of them. The first 2 are normal platforming levels, while the third one is a bit of platforming at the beginning, but ending in a Robotnik fight and freeing of the birds. There are also special stages that can be accessed by collecting at least 50 or more rings and going past the bonus panel that ends the level, in any act 1 or 2, besides the final sky-based zone. The special stages are used to collect rings in order to get more lives and continues if needed. The first zone is Green Hill Zone, as ever. That is very grassy, plainy, with a lot of different cliffs. Journeying onwards past Green Hill Zone, you come across Bridge Zone, which has a similar grassy plain aesthetic, but with some more bridges and decorations, like fences along the outside, or I guess in the background, I should say, and foreground. After speeding across the bridges, you will enter the Jungle Zone, which is thick with trees, waterfalls, and many vines across the path. Though after scaling up the jungle's waterfall, you enter the Flooded Labyrinth Zone. The zone is a maze-like area with many ups and downs, as well as most of it being underwater. Once you discover the maze's exit, we surface into Robotnik's factory in Scrap Brain Zone. This zone is very mechanical and polluted, leaving little to no vegetation. Though once we conquer the factory, we chase Robotnik to his final stand in Skybase Zone. This zone takes Sonic onto the flying airship in the sky for the final fight. Overall, the zones are all distinct in the way they're mapped out, as well as how they are looking and playing through and whatnot, giving a lot of differences, that are much needed and making a lot of new things to look at, which is very nice. Each area has some different enemies, traps, and whatnot, adding just a little more variety to each one that you come across. Even though Green Hill Zone, Labyrinth Zone, and Scrap Brain Zone themes are reused from the Genesis versions, they do have different layouts, making them, like a lot of other things I've said in this game, just different enough to be different. The game mechanics are very simplistic, with just being able to run forward, which will accelerate to a top speed after a few seconds of running, as well as when you're running, you can hold down in order to go into a ball that will destroy any non-spiked enemies that run into you, or you run into them. Besides running, you can also jump, which puts you into another ball to defeat non-spiked enemies that hit you while you're in the air. Now you must run through each zone and get to the end bonus panel, in which case the next area will open up. And you must continue through all 6 zones until you beat Robotnik once and for all, winning the game, with either having the bad ending, where you don't have all the Chaos Emeralds, or the good ending, where you did indeed collect all 6 Chaos Emeralds as you go. As for its legacy, being the second Sonic game created just after the Genesis version, / kind of along the Genesis version, there's not much here that really adds to what the Genesis does. Like I said, because of the limitations of being on a handheld system being the Game Gear, even though it does look really good, there are some things that are different, but still makes it feel like its own individual Sonic game. So I basically just consider it to be its own unique thing, separate from the Genesis version, as there are enough differences to be a whole new game basically. But even with having 3 levels that were also in the Genesis version, or I guess 3 level themes based in the Genesis version, I think it works really well to use them, putting different layouts and giving a whole different feel to the game entirely, making it worth a look at. Overall, the game is a good experience on its own, separate or with the Genesis version. It has the right amount of difficulty, though if you're going through without struggle, the game only lasts about a couple hours or so, less than maybe even, including collecting the slightly hidden Chaos Emeralds. The story itself is pretty basic, which is a plot that Sonic keeps from the Genesis version and continues for a while, just being simply down to Robotnik's doing something wrong, and Sonic must stop him and save his animal friends, while getting the Chaos Emeralds. The characters are, likewise, also very simplistic, with their animations and expressions, but they do get across that Sonic is impatient and gives him his can-do attitude early on. The zones are all very unique, with good difficulty across them, as well as each feeling unique with their own separate challenges, and just way about them, looks, etc, etc. Even with having 3 from the Genesis version, they all do a good job at standing out. All in all, this game is a really solid addition to the Sonic the Hedgehog formula, which, again, even being on handheld, which I've mentioned a few times, it does do really good work with what it can do. Although it is a little bit more trimmed down version than the Genesis version, it is doing what it can and does it really well, especially giving us different zones than you get in the Genesis version, so you get some different looks and whatnot, and themings you otherwise wouldn't get. Luckily to anyone who is interested in playing the game has been ported a few times, making it very easy to pick up and play nowadays, even if you don't have a Game Gear or the game. The GameCube version, and a particular PC version of Sonic Adventure DX, comes with a lot of unlockable Game Gear games, including Sonic the Hedgehog Game Gear. Beyond that, they are also included in the Sonic Origins Plus, which is currently available on most modern consoles, PC, as well as the game being in Sonic Mega Collection Plus, which is available on PS2, Xbox, and PC. But with so many different places to play the game, it is very easy to pick up and play and try out some old nostalgia, and Sonic where he got his roots. And best of all, being that it is part of a lot of different collections, if this particular game doesn't suit you, I'm sure something else in these collections will. But until then, thank you my fuzziest for watching, and I will see you next anytime.